Hello everyone, it's Old Guardian here. In this video I'm going to take a look at the best Hearthstone meta decks that you can use to climb all the way to Legend in late February 2021. The last best decks video I made was at the start of February, and that was the moment when Ramp Paladin seemed to just steamroll on the ladder. And actually I didn't recommend Ramp Paladin as the best option back then, I recommended the counters to Ramp Paladin as the best option. So obviously Ramp Paladin was strong, but you could strategically counter it and try to work your way to Legend through that. Right now the meta is a little bit more diverse, it's a little bit more fractured. We have Ramp Paladin, it's still all centered around Ramp Paladin. We have Ramp Paladin, we have counters to Ramp Paladin, then we have counters to the counters of Ramp Paladin. And that also opens up space for these sorts of jack-of-all-trades decks that don't have a lot of great matchups but don't have a lot of weak matchups either, because there's a diverse meta, so a jack-of-all-trades deck is a fairly straightforward and reliable choice. And looking at the best decks right now, number 8 is one of those jack-of-all-trades decks. It's the Highlander Mage. Highlander Mage has been fun recently, it's also pretty powerful, it's also ridiculously expensive, so obviously if you don't happen to have a coffer full of legendary cards in your Hearthstone collection, then yeah, this is not going to be the deck for you. But it has some good matchups, like Spell Damage Mage, Aggro Rogue, some of those fairly popular matchups. Its weakest matchup is like Priest. It's not terrible against Ramp Paladin, it's not terrible against Token Druid, so it's one of these jack-of-all-trades decks, and when you're facing a lot of different types of decks, this is a fairly reliable option to bring to the ladder. Number 7, Combo Rogue is similar. People are talking about Whirlkick Rogue, but Whirlkick Master is consistently the weakest card in Whirlkick Rogue. It's just very hard to actually get a lot of use out of it. However, now people have also started to play these sorts of Combo Rogue decks, which are basically the Whirlkick Rogue deck without the Whirlkick Master. I'm not sure if this is completely optimal yet, it seems that this archetype is still being worked on. Keyword and Ivory is the weakest card in this list, so you could build this list without that. You could for example use Edwin there. But the inclusion of Flick into this a little bit slower style of rogue deck seems to work pretty well. And where there is Natural Boost Poison, there's always room for a Thoughtseize Deckhand as well. Combo Rogue's main weakness is that this is weak against Ramp Paladin, so you're more about countering those counters to Ramp Paladin and then countering some of those jack-of-all-trades decks. But if you meet the Meta Tyrant, then that's going to be tough for you. To an extent, the same applies to number 6 on my list, which is Zoo Warlock. Zoo Warlock is also, it's an excellent jack-of-all-trades deck. It's a fairly aggressive deck, it has a chance against every matchup basically. Sometimes it just steamrolls the opponent, sometimes it has some sweet comebacks available still. And while it doesn't have a lot of great matchups, Secret Mage is like one of the only matchups where it's really strong. It has a lot of like 52-53% matchups, and it's weak against Ramp Paladin. But now that the meta is a little bit more diverse, there's room for Zoo as well. A more diverse meta that includes more of these mid-range decks again has been a bit of bad news for ETC Warrior. ETC Warrior was my number 1 recommendation a couple of weeks ago, because it has a pretty decent Ramp Paladin matchup, and it's pretty good against many of the aggro decks, Token Druids, Aggro Rogues. But now that we are seeing more mid-range decks in the meta again, then that means that they can pressure ETC Warrior. And while ETC Warrior is still a great choice, it has fallen a couple of positions and it's currently my number 5 recommendation. I can now also recommend another Paladin deck in addition to Ramp Paladin, and number 4 is Broom Paladin. Broom Paladin is just an incredibly flexible deck that always has a chance. Its main weakness is that it is weak against Ramp Paladin. And when Ramp Paladin was rising in popularity like a rocket, then yeah, your prospects of playing Broom Paladin seemed a little bit weak. But now that we're seeing the diverse metagame, and Broom Paladin just wrecks Spell Damage Mages, Secret Mages, it's great against Enraged Warriors as well, Broom Paladin just has made a comeback and it's looking really good right now. Token Druid remains one of my main recommendations, coming in at number 3. It is strong against Ramp Paladin, it's strong against every other Paladin, it's strong against Aggro Rogues, it's strong against Hunters. It has a number of weaknesses as well, so it's a little bit polarized. But right now it's still good against many of the popular decks in the meta, and an excellent choice for climbing. Coming in at number 2 is Aggro Rogue. Aggro Rogue is just blazingly fast right now, and it can draw insane amounts of cards between Secret Passage, Swindle, Greyheart Sage and Cutting Class. I've sometimes seen this deck draw like 10 cards in a turn and spend only like 3 mana to do it, and then so much damage coming to face. Very fast deck and one of the main contenders to Ramp Paladin right now, because these aggro decks have become faster and faster, and they're just able to punish slow decks so hard right now. But now that we are in a more diverse metagame and we can't counter specific decks so hard as we could just a couple of weeks ago, that means that the strongest overall deck is the #1 recommendation. And if you really want to get to Legend, Ramp Paladin is still an excellent choice. The best performing Ramp Paladin decks on the climb are typically these that run the Alma Vendor and the Circus Amalgam, because there's a lot of aggro around that's trying to counter Ramp Paladin, and having these sorts of defensive tools available in your deck is more valuable than getting bigger high rolls. This may change if you meet a slower metagame where strongmen instead of Circus Amalgams can be better. Overall, the meta is still significantly warped around Ramp Paladin, but there's a lot of diversity right now, because there are counters to this and counters to counters and so on and so forth. So there are many decks that can succeed on Legend Climb right now, but the strongest one is the Meta Tyrant. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and subscribe to my channel for more.